Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am so thrilled to have Allison Conway of C-Level Agency here. Allison, we were just talking about our origin story, and I was like, did somebody introduce you? You're like, no, I reached out to you on LinkedIn. And then I looked back, I'm like, oh my gosh, because you found me in a Facebook group. Then you found me, then you listened to episodes, found me, connected with me on LinkedIn. I remember having really great conversations with you. But here we are 11 months later, we're finally getting an interview. So this just means that, this is the time that you're meant to be here, and we're meant to be in each other's lives. So thank you.
Yeah, sometimes timing just has to work out the way it's going to work out.
Yes, exactly. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your agency, but also your backstory. Like, what brought you into agency life? Was it always your ambition to have your own agency?
No, well, sort of. The ambition was to be able to travel. So my grandmother, when all of her grandchildren turned 10 years old, she let us pick a place anywhere in the world that we wanted to travel, and she was going to take us there. So when I was 10, I chose Paris, and it was just my grandmother and I in Paris, and I had to miss the last day of fifth grade. And of course, the last day of school is like all the kids running around, signing yearbooks, great fun. But even as a 10-year-old kid, I remember saying, on the one hand, last day of fifth grade, but on the other hand, Paris. And I remember, even as a 10-year-old knowing that was like a no-brainer. But then going to Paris and sort of discovering that the world was so much bigger than fifth grade. And I was also bullied in school. So sort of being able to get that perspective, like, oh my gosh, all of these people have never met me before. They have never decided what they think about me. There is an entire life happening outside of the four walls of that school. And this is what I want to do. So I went to college, got a degree in journalism, and knew that I didn't really want to be a reporter, but, thought that I wanted to go into like fashion writing or something like that. So after college, I started to pound the pavement looking for an editorial job in fashion. And very quickly, living in New York City, very quickly started to discover that it didn't necessarily matter how much I pounded the pavement. I was not the offspring of a famous designer. So getting a job at Vogue wasn't necessarily in the cards. So while I was still sort of trying to apply to jobs, I was freelance writing. So I got a temp job selling handbags for like a woman who makes them, and she was bringing them to a trade show at the Jobbet Center. So I printed out little business cards at Staples on my way to the Jobbet Center, and, got there a few hours earlier than when this woman needed me, handed out the business cards, and it's like, hey, I can totally write your blogs and your newsletters and your emails and whatever, totally lying.
Manifesting.
Yeah, manifesting. That's a better word. As you have to do as a young, naive entrepreneur. But those clients, I got my first couple of clients that way. And those people, started to say like, oh, hey, you're young. You could run my social media too, right? Or, hey, you could, you've written the copy. Can you make the website too? And as I had manifested before, I manifested again. And I said, absolutely, yes, I can. And that is sort of how the agency, got started. First, all I wanted was a way to be able to travel. And then it started as copy and then design, and then grew into marketing strategy and brand management and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I don't think there's one without the other. Because when I had a PR agency, I quickly found that, but people actually need to understand what their brand is. And they might need a website, and they might need us to help create their templates and understand what content pillars are, and really help them with that strategy side too, not just let's get you on, in an interview or on a podcast or what have you.
Right, exactly. I started doing websites, and then people would say, okay, so now people are just going to find me. I'm like, well, have the place for them to land when they do find you, but you're going to need some other things in place for them to actually find you.
Yeah. And this is pre-pandemic. So you'd already set yourself up to be, virtual a little bit, to be able to travel and have that lifestyle that you wanted.
Yes, I had been preaching remote work for years before the pandemic, and everybody called me crazy and radical. And, you're never going to get ahead if you're always traveling. And then the pandemic happened and everyone was like, hey, Allison, what's that? That software? I think you said it was called Zoom. What's that again?
Oh my gosh.
You're using?
Wow.
Yeah, let me get you set up.
And through this experience, you've now traveled to over 40 countries. Is that?
Yeah. I haven't counted in a while, but somewhere in that ballpark.
Wow. And you're also a best-selling author?
Yes. Yep.
Tell us about the book. How did you add that into starting an agency and travel?
Yeah, so the book is actually not about travel or starting an agency. I wrote that a few years after college, so I was sort of doing both. I was doing the freelance writing and writing for myself as well. The book is actually called, can we curse on this podcast?
You can, and I'll have my team mark it.
Well, the book is actually called Friend. Yeah, so replace friendship, replace P with T. And it's about how important your friendships are in your personal life, but as well as your professional life, especially in your professional life. And I was just sort of discovering that as I was finishing school and, moving into the workplace and discovering the person and the entrepreneur that I wanted to be, and realizing that these people that I'm spending all of my time with are going to have a massive impact on my ability to see these goals come to fruition.
Yeah. Your network is everything, right? They say you're the sum of the top 5 people that you hang out with or something like that.
Yeah, which is actually the thesis of the book. You are the average of the 5 closest people you spend your time with.
Yeah, nice. But I love that you were able to think about that, think it might be useful for other people, and create something that's useful, helpful, and will help guide other young people on their journey.
Yeah, it was just something that I was experiencing and realizing. People talk about your coworkers or your business network or your romantic partners and how important your spouse is, or a romantic long-term partner. And I was just realizing that your platonic friendships were equally as important as any of the others.
Yeah. Amazing. So let's talk about your business, C-Level Agency. What does it look like day to day for you? Do you have employees or contractors who work for you? Are you trying to do it all yourself? And what do you think is the main problem that you see when people, come to you for help?
Well, oh gosh, great question. So I work with contractors of all different kinds. Sometimes if I have an especially large project, if I'm working with a corporate client, I'll bring in contractors that are specifically for, have a skill that I need to fill in a gap for. But the biggest problem that I see people come to is just some degree of ignorance over exactly what brand management is. Like I said, when I was first getting started, people sort of thought, oh, I have a website. Now that is sort of all I need for people to be able to find me. And it is such an important piece. And I, offered that as a really important offering for small businesses. But managing your brand and your perception and the way that people find you has so much to do with the way that you show up online anywhere. If you were to walk into a party and have a conversation with a few people, you'll probably be able to, not necessarily judge them, but draw some conclusions about who they are as a person by the way that they're dressed, by the way that they wear their hair, by, if they're wearing makeup or not, or the kinds of shoes they're wearing, or, if they tell you what they do for a living as the first thing that they talk about, or do they talk about their hobbies first or their family first? We are giving people information about ourselves all the time, whether or not we realize it. And people are drawing conclusions about us. And not in a judgmental way, but it is what it is. The clothes that you wear, all these kinds of things are giving people information about you. And the same is true about your brand. If you are showing up online, maybe inconsistently, or you're using 100 different colors, or you have flip-flopping opinions about, things going on in your industry or whatever it is, people are drawing conclusions about the credibility or the relevance of your business whether or not you realize it. And brand management is essentially having some degree of control of putting out intentionally deliberate information for people to draw the conclusions that you want them to draw about you.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. That is exactly the spot that people come in when they wanted to work with me in PR and having to go back and say, actually, we need to really think about this and this and this and make sure that you have an integrated, cohesive strategy, that everywhere you show up is the same person, the same business, the same brand. And there's little mistakes people make. So they might have that part correct, but then they don't have a great community manager answering their DMs or, answering people's comments on their social, or they're not doing it themselves, or the person they have doing it has a completely different tone of voice.
Right. And I'm sure what you experienced in PR is if something happens, they get a bad review or something on Google or Yelp or wherever it is, and they emotionally want to respond to that. Or, whatever it is in the PR world, that's the same with brand management. There's all those kinds of the relationship that you have with the public and customers and the way that people perceive you. There's so many things going on. And if you're not paying attention, people are going to draw conclusions with or without you.
Yeah, 100%. What do you think is the main thing people need to get across, whether it's on a website or, in other areas for their marketing strategy?
Mm-hmm. Well, I work with a lot of industries that are sort of vanilla, or people might think they're like the unsexy kinds of industries. I work with a lot of financial services. I've worked with executive recruiting or logistics for construction companies and all of these different types of industries that people think there's this like template or boilerplate kinds of content or brand visuals or the kinds of storytelling that these brands are sort of allowed to do or not allowed to do. And I think the most important thing that I could convey to somebody is being a little bit weird or being yourself and letting your full personality shine through, no matter what it is that you are doing, is not only encouraged, but imperative. If you want to stand out, if you want to, let's say you're a financial planner or something like that. Every single financial planner that I've ever seen, their logo is blue and yellow.
Oh.
Right? Which is not necessarily the problem. If you want blue and yellow, if that works, if you've created a strategy and those colors work for you, then fantastic. But if you're choosing those colors because you think that's what financial planners have to do, right, then that's going to be felt. Even subconsciously, your customers are going to feel that, whether you realize that's what they're feeling or not. So you don't have to do that if you don't feel like that is the right strategy for you, or that's the right visuals or the right technique to reach the kinds of audience, the kind of clientele that you are interested in reaching. You can be weird. You can, have fun with the graphics and all the visuals. There's so much more to branding than the visuals, but people tend to get sort of stuck in that place because they think they have to follow the template that has been set for them by everybody else in the industry. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. One of the things I always tell people is you think certain colors are going to evoke certain emotion, but if it's a color that doesn't resonate with you, that you don't ever wear, that you ever use in your real life, then guess what? It's not going to be genuine. It's not going to resonate with your audience and convey the message you want it to, because you're not being authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what you mentioned, a color that you never wear. If you are the face of your brand and you want orange to be your color, but you would never be caught dead wearing orange, right, you got to pick a color. If you're going to be on stages, if you're going to be on social media, you got to be either in some kind of neutrals like a black or white, or something in your brand colors, because those photos, if they go on your website or go on your social media, you don't want to be in a complete opposite color of your brand. You want to live in that universe. So that's a great point.
Yeah. When you are working with clients, do you have a framework that you like to step them through? Do you do like a discovery call first, or have them fill out information and then walk them through a process?
Well, we have a service called One Day Website, which is for small businesses, where we literally do your website in a day. If you're somebody who has said, oh my gosh, I just need something simple, this is exactly the kinds of service that you're looking for. And for that particular service, we have them fill out a questionnaire, and we also have them do some kind of vision board, whether it's on Pinterest or somewhere else, on Instagram, wherever they want to collect that information. And then we then get on a call and go through all of that information together. And then on the day, we get started first thing in the morning. We sort of do the initial design. We get on another call in the afternoon to make sure we're all going in the right direction. And then all of those things are delivered to you by the end of the day. So that's for small businesses. When it's we offer long-term brand management and retainer contracts to medium to large companies, and they take on a very similar structure, but we're sort of setting the groundwork. The first few weeks are that onboarding. We're really setting the groundwork for a longer-term relationship.
Yeah. And when I'm just trying to think through, because you've mentioned, we both talked about authenticity a few times, bringing your quirks to the table. What are some of the objections you hear from people in industries where they think they have to be perceived a certain way? And how do you get them over those objections?
Yeah, I think there's a totally reasonable level of fear that people have in wanting to do things the way that they've seen them done. But I think in the conversations when I'm onboarding somebody or in that discovery call, I always try to make sure we talk about what the goal is and how you want to get to this place. And when they're struggling with, I don't want to do that because that seems like I don't want to sort of, it almost goes back to like middle school and not wanting to stand out too much. You don't want to be ostracized, or you don't want to look like you don't know what you're talking about, or, and we as adults know that the kid who stands out the most may very well be the most successful because that's what's important. So getting them over that hurdle is really just about confronting them with the goals that they have said they have. So, you've shared with me that you want to be a keynote speaker on industry stages within the next 18 months. Okay, great. If that's the goal, if that's what you'd like to achieve, then let's talk about who are some keynote speakers that you really admire in the industry, and what are they doing, and what are they doing differently that allowed them to get on the stage and be the person that people are interested in hearing from as a keynote speaker.
Yeah.
It's probably because they've figured out some method that's totally different from the rest of the industry. They have figured out some angle or some point of view that stands out from the rest of the industry. So whatever that goal is, what's going to get you there is likely going to have to be something that is not totally outlandish, but it does stand out from the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think one of the ways that you've helped make yourself stand out is the remote first, is the travel. In fact, I don't really usually read long newsletters. And I just commented recently on one of yours that, wow, this really drew me in. I was hooked. I wanted to hear the next part of your story. And I believe, was that part of when you did the Camino de Santiago?
Yes. So the Camino de Santiago is a 500-mile pilgrimage across France and Spain. So I walked it. I feel like I have to, people don't realize, I say 500 miles and they're like, okay, you drove it? Oh. Yeah, I walked. It took 37 days. And the story that I wrote about that you're referencing was a story about a man that I got stuck behind, and I was just dealing with a lot of anger and sort of taking it out. This man did nothing to me, and I was just placing my anger on the wrong place at the wrong time. And it was just a story about, how I got sort of removed from that place in my head, got sort of unstuck from that place in my head, and realizing that I was placing my anger on the wrong thing. And travel will certainly do that. Travel provides such an immense amount of perspective, and the people that you meet and the various life stages and life circumstances. And I think it's one of the things that makes me a good designer and a good marketer, because you have to be able to understand people and be able to tell stories, and hearing other people's stories is, well, certainly one way to get good at telling them.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a specific industry or a couple of industries that you prefer to work in, or do you have clients that run the gamut?
I really have clients that run the gamut. That one day website offering is for small businesses. That's really for that like Main Street USA kind of business that needs something simple. And then the sort of longer term brand management retainers are for those medium to large size businesses that maybe need to start developing a personal brand for the CEO or other people in leadership and really want to start developing a real personality for their brand, and, sort of making their business a whole person. So whether you're a small business and you need something quick and short term and that's going to get you to where you need to be, or a longer term relationship for something a little bigger.
Yeah. One of the other topics that I know you talk about, which is something that is definitely I feel close to, is ADHD for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Do you have ADHD? Have you seen it become a superpower or hindered your workflows? What do you mean? Let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah. So I do have ADHD. I didn't get diagnosed until a few years ago. So probably about 2021, I got diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia at the same time. And I spent my entire life having no idea that I had either of these things. So I would read books that are objectively good books, something like Atomic Habits or any of those types of productivity books, business books, those types of things, and receive the advice and have no idea why I was just the one person that wasn't ever able to implement or use this advice effectively. And then when I got diagnosed and started to learn a lot more about it, I realized that it was just because my brain worked completely differently. And, something like Atomic Habits, that's a great book, is just simply not going to work for me. So it's been a few years and I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to use my brain, because I spent my entire, adult life trying to work against it and trying to take advice that wasn't really ever meant for me. So I see it as both a hindrance and a superpower. My creativity and my strategy and my ability to see the bird's eye view as well as get into the weeds is certainly because of ADHD. And, that sort of creative strategic thinking definitely comes from that. And then there's all kinds of things that as an entrepreneur, it's tough to deal with the executive dysfunction and all the other kinds of things that come with it. So, lots of people say it's a superpower, and I do agree. I think that it is, but, I think both things can be true. I think it is both a hindrance and a great advantage.
Yeah. I was also diagnosed as an adult. So, and then I was like, oh, so many things make so much more sense. I've always been doing a lot of projects at once. I've always been interested in a lot of different things. If somebody's not reminding me of something that I need to do on a deadline, I'm probably going to say, yes, I'm getting it done, but then I'll go on and move something else. All of these things. And like you, I read all these books. I try different tactics. Time blocking isn't going to work for me. Like, I will get distracted by something else, right? And it's so funny, even like thinking about how that affects work or, personal relationships, things that my boyfriend is like, it'll just take 5 minutes to do this one thing. And I'm like, I can't even do that because these other things I have to get done. So I feel you. I'm still trying to figure out how my brain's functioning, what works, what doesn't, how to use it effectively for my business, for teaching, to grow things and not just get distracted by something else.
The worst crime someone can do is pull you away from something you're hyperfixated on. Like, go away. I cannot be bothered right now. Come back in a couple hours.
Yes. Even today, I was like, my dogs are right here. I haven't taken them for a walk. I'm doing 6 podcast interviews in a row, but I love meeting people. I love having these conversations. And so to me, that's not like, oh my God, I have to do this. It's like, yay, I get to do this. But guess what? You guys are going to get walked later. And, I might eat lunch or I might not because depending on how much time I have, and nothing else is going to happen. I'm not going to answer other emails because I'm hyper-focused on making sure that I'm creating what I hope is a good experience for both of us and for the listeners and people who are watching.
One thing that I find helpful is eating the same thing every day so I don't have to think about it, even if it's just, I make the same very simple sandwich every day for a week or two or something. It certainly helps. Also, pen and paper, writing things down physically, not in my notes app on my phone or on my laptop or whatever, but physically. And if one more person tells me to buy a planner,
Oh, do you know how many planners I have over here? I actually have found one that I think is working for me. I don't use it fully, but I do write down everything so I can see it in the daily. And it's called Silk and Sonder. They have it out, and it's month to month. So this is like July, and I can just go and, it has some great things, reflections, intentions, stuff that will of life, things that I need to fill out. But I'm not there yet, but at least I can look on my week and say, okay, I have this urgent thing due. So let me figure out how I'm going to do that thing. And particularly because I'm like getting my MBA right now and teaching and doing all these other things. So that is, honestly, I've looked at so many like you have, and it's just, I can't.
I know. I'm working on writing another book, and I'm just outlining, and it's currently being organized in 100 different ways. It's like, I'm going to use this type of organizational, structure. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, no, that's not working. I'm going to organize it in this different way. But you just have to lean into that, whatever your brain needs to feel like it can be grounded on something, you just have to do that.
I wrote a chapter in an anthology last year, and what really worked for me was walking and like leaving myself voice memos and putting them into a transcription, and then being able to craft that, because I knew what I wanted to say, but I just couldn't sit down and type it out.
Right. That's a great.
Yeah. So that was something that I forgot about, but that's like something I'm like, I need to start using that again.
No, that's a great. And sometimes that happens, right? Where it's like, oh, that thing really worked, and I totally forgot about that. That happens too. And I should try that again.
What do you see changing in our world of marketing, strategy, design with AI? You have to throw in the AI question because everybody's wondering and trying to figure out how to use these tools.
Yeah, I sort of belong to the camp that AI should not be fought. It should be embraced with some caution. I think it's here and it's coming even faster than we can, we're going to have to figure out some way to regulate it, especially for artists and designers and things like that. But the best thing that I could ever tell somebody, I even tell small businesses this in the one-day website service. One of the things I say is just do some Googling, just do a little bit of learn the alphabet of AI, right? Like just get in, start learning the basics, just start figuring out how this is going to work. Because it's also, for small businesses especially, write your Instagram captions, write some blogs for SEO, like start doing all those kinds of things. That kind of stuff can only help. And then the best thing you can do for the other side of it is just be as well educated on it as you possibly can be for small businesses or large, or, no matter the size, is to be. And that goes for CEOs too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the CEO of a medium to large size company and you're saying, well, I can get the middle managers and below to learn this for me, don't fall into that trap. You really need to educate yourself on it as well.
Do you see it affecting your business at all?
Maybe, but it's I think the way that it's going to unfold, I think maybe because of the travel and probably the ADHD and dyslexia as well, I've always been highly adaptable. I've always been able to, I don't know where it's going to go, but when it goes there, I'll be able to figure that out. So I think, in terms of web design, might be moving in that direction to be able, small businesses might be able to, easily use AI to create their own websites. And if that's the case, then great. I'll implement AI as an offering. I'll maybe teach AI. I'll do something, that allows me to be ahead of the curve. And I encourage everyone to do the same.
Allison, where's the next place you're going to travel? Do you have any plans coming up?
Gosh, I don't have anything on the calendar at the moment, but that's sort of how I operate. Nothing's on the calendar until I'm like, hey, family, I'll be gone for the next 6 weeks. So I've only been to one country on the continent of Africa, which was Egypt. So I would really love to discover more Africa and the Middle East too. I would love to do, some more exploring over there. I don't know a specific country yet, but that's sort of where my head is. So, when I go to book something, that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm also a travel lover. And this year has been a huge travel year where last year I was like, I want to travel a little bit more. And I'm like, oh, I didn't mean this much. but it's, but it's an experience and it's fun and it's a certain part of my life. So
yeah, and I like to travel where I can maybe find a co-working space or something so that I can meet other, online business owners or agency owners or whatever the case is. And that's always a great, sort of gives you a soft landing, especially if you want to stay in a location for a long period of time. It gives you an immediate group of people to meet. And then, through that, you can gain the confidence to go out and do some stuff on your own as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. And what do you see next for C-Level Agency?
Oh my goodness. I have really been enjoying this one-day website offering. It's something that I actually did before my business grew when I was first getting started. As I belonged to a co-working space and it was a lot of small local businesses in the area. And so I did a lot of websites for the people in the co-working space. And it was just this great offering. But then I grew a lot. I grew very quickly. Started to, work for more corporate, medium to large size businesses. And I love working with them because those are always the people that you have those conversations when you give them permission to be themselves and be a little bit weird. It's always like when they figure it out, their face lights up because they're like, this is what I've been wanting to do. But because I'm in this corporate environment, I didn't know that I was allowed to. But the small businesses are I just feel very grateful that I'm able to work with them and sort of call back my roots, my early beginnings, and, be able to help these businesses that are the lifeblood of American cities. So
100%.
Yeah, it's been great to bring it back.
I love hearing that because that's something I also just brought back an offer, but I'm doing a little differently where I'm doing, because I'm like, I don't want to be a PR firm again. I don't want to do that because I'm really invested and passionate about teaching and podcasting. But I'm happy to help people because I get asked a lot, I'm happy to help them set up profiles, learn how to do it themselves, set up their templates, right? Get them some wins, and then they can be comfortable just pitching themselves a little bit and knowing how to use the tools and resources so that they may not have a lot of time, but by using some tools, they can streamline the process really easily. So, yeah.
Yeah. Starting a business is such an emotional experience that when you're getting started and you're like, wait a second, I have to also be a professional web designer and a professional marketer and a copywriter and a social media manager and every single thing that you have to do. It's so stressful and so emotional. So it's been really fun to be able to help those people out.
And if people want to know more about your one-day website or your other offerings, are we directing them to your website, to your LinkedIn?
Yeah, that would be great. So my website is clevelagency.com. So C-level is spelled like the level of the C, as opposed to C-suite. S-E-A, clevelagency.com. And you can check me out on LinkedIn as well. So Allison E. Conway on LinkedIn. And I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And my last question is, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, poem, verse?
You know what? I've always loved why not me as just a very simple, why not you? Why can't you be a little bit of a weirdo in your branding? Why can't you travel while you work? Why can't you, start your business? Why can't you? I also love the Roosevelt's, the credit belongs to the one who is actually in the arena. Every entrepreneur is familiar with that. And then I also like everything is coming and everything is already here.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you for offering us not one, not two, but three things to think about. That's one of my favorite parts is being able to reflect on people's words or mottos, things that get them through and then add them to my list.
Yes.
Well, this has been so fun. I really appreciate your time and unpacking the role of small business, remote agencies, where people need to start with their businesses, and so much more. This was a robust conversation, and I know that everybody's going to really get a lot out of it. So I appreciate you.
Much. This was fantastic.
Thank you to everybody watching or listening. I'll be back again in a couple days with another amazing guest to share their story and their journey with you. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.